All right, so we are continuing now to learn from the Sefer Siach Sarfei Kodesh. I think this is video number 5. This is the life of Rebbe Nachman and more Breslov history and more information. In the last video we finished off, we were talking about how Rebbe Nachman would hide his greatness, okay? From even his father-in-law. He was living in his father-in-law's house after he got married in the village of Osatin, and he would hide his greatness from everybody. Even his wife didn't even know so much, but he would always hide his greatness, right? It says over here in Siach Sarfei Kodesh, I already had started making this video, but then I was disturbed, so I'm starting again. It says over here that one time his father-in-law was walking in the winter on the frozen river, and he saw Rebbe Nachman playing with younger kids, like they were kind of like ice skating on the river, something like that. And like he was like, oh, like I took this great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov as a son-in-law, and he doesn't even learn, and he doesn't do anything, right? And it says over here in the Sefer, just the Sefer is right over here. I was learning it before, so I'm just going to say it until I have to read from it. So one time, right, we learned that Rabbi Ephraim was Rabbi Ephraim was a great machnes orchim. He always had a lot of big tzaddikim coming to his house and stay there. He was probably on a popular route on the road, whatever. And one time there was a tzaddik who came. He was one of the students of the Maggid of Mezrich. And Rabbi Ephraim, Rabbi Nachman's father-in-law, was complaining to this tzaddik that I took, this great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov as a son-in-law, and he doesn't know how to learn at all. And the guy said, no, it's impossible. He's a great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. Come on. And he's like, no, I'm telling you. He's like, okay, fine. So let's test him. So they called him in, and he asked him to learn the Mishnah that is in Mesechtes Baba Kama, a simple Mishnah, Perek Beis Mishnah Gimel, right? The Mishnah says, Hakelev v'hagedi shekafzu meroish hagag. A dog and a goat that jump from the top of a roof, right? And Rabbeinu read it like this. He read it Hakalev v'hagadi, right? Shekafzu marsh. And it says over here in the footnote that Rebbe Nachman pronounced it this way with these nekudos, which translates it into the Russian language. It doesn't say exactly what it means, the part that's the Kalev v'hagadi, but the marsh part, instead of the Rosh Hagag, Rebbe Nachman read it as marsh, which means fast. Anyway, he read it and he made it like he didn't know, because he didn't want this tzaddik to know. And now this tzaddik was very, very embarrassed because he saw that Rabbi Nachman's father-in-law was correct, that this guy did not know anything. Right, so even still, this tzaddik was not so, he didn't want to make such a big deal about it because he didn't want to cause stress between him and his father-in-law. However, when he met Rebbe Nachman afterwards, Rebbe Nachman was outside the house, right? He went over to him and he said, "Could it really be that you're a great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov and a grandson of Rebbe Nachman who are Denker, and he gave you and your father-in-law gave a lot of money because of your yichus, and you don't learn anything, that you don't even know how to read the words correctly, right?" And he hit Rabbeinu a little bit on the face, like a soft hit, and Rebbe Nachman cried, but he didn't say anything because again he did not want to reveal his greatness, right? Now, eventually this tzaddik left the city, and he was going through the forest, and he heard a great crying and screaming, and he said to his wagon driver that he should go towards this screaming, and they went further and further and further, and they heard somebody davening, right? And he came until he came to the place of Rebbe Nachman, and he found Rebbe Nachman sitting there, wrapped in his talis and tefillin, and he was screaming with koilei koilos. He was screaming on top of his lungs until Shemayim, and there was tears coming out of his eyes, right? Until the ground around him was wet, right? And this tzaddik, it says over here, v'nival hatzaddik ma'oid. The tzaddik was very confused and wow and whatever, and he finished until Rabbi Nachman, and he waited until Rabbi Nachman finished his davening, and he asked, and then he begged Rabbi Nachman to forgive him for screaming at him and to be and that he hit him a little bit, right? Because now he saw that Rabbi Nachman was actually a great tzaddik and he was just hiding these things, right? Right. So Rabbi Nachman said to him that I forgive you only on Tanai, only on condition that you promise that you will never ever be mefarsim this situation, that nobody should ever know about this, right? But the tzaddik said, no, I need to tell this in front of your father-in-law, right? um, and because he wanted his father-in-law to be happy, and Rebbe Nachman said, okay, fine, you could tell my father-in-law, right? And the tzaddik went to his father-in-law, and he said, we don't know anything about the nechte of the Baal Shem Tov, about the greatness of the grandchildren of the Baal Shem Tov, right? And it's better that you do not get involved so much in the inyan of your son-in-law, of Rabbi Nachman, right? And give him and let him serve Hashem. He didn't tell him exactly what he saw. He told him that he's a special guy. Don't worry about him, right? And Rabbi Nachman's father listened to the tzaddik, right? Because he was one of the great gedolim, a talmidei of the Maggid of Mezrich, right? And if he says so, then that's what it is, right? And then after and before this tzaddik passed away from the world, he told his sons this story so that we should know this story, and that they should also never be lachlik chas v'shalom on Rabbi Nachman, that they should never have argue with Rabbi Nachman or go against him, right? Okay. Here's another story which now starts to reveal the greatness of Rebbe Nachman more, right? So now Rebbe Nachman, again, right, he was living with his father-in-law, Rabbi Ephraim, in Kfar Satin, and it came to the yahrzeit of his father-in-law's father, right? Meaning his wife's father's grandfather, right? And they went to a city called Alexandrovika, which was close to there, right? So they went there to make a minyan, because in the minyan because in Kfar Satin there was not even a minyan, right? That's what Rav Levi Yitzchak Bender says. Interesting, he lived in a place where there was no minyan. That's wild, right? And of course, his father-in-law took Rabbi Nachman, and they came to the Beis Medrash there, right? And when the teenagers saw Rabbi Nachman over there, right, they said, well, they were like, wow, this guy's, he's pretty good. They liked the way that he looked. They liked the way that he acted, a little bit, and they wanted to talk to him, but they didn't know where to start, right? So now they davened, and after davening, they sent right away to buy mashke, to make a l'chaim for the yahrzeit, right? And Rabbi Ephraim gave them all yain saraf, right? And these people in the shul, these kids there, they asked Rabbi Ephraim that he should tell his son-in-law, Rabbi Nachman, who was Rabbi Nachman, right, that they should learn a parak of Mishnayos, right? I wanted to see what he was, what he was doing. So Rabbi Nachman, they asked Rabbi Nachman to learn Mishnayos, and he turned his face to the wall, and he took a Mishnayos and he put it on a stender, right? And they waited until he finished, right? And they also made a l'chaim with him, and now they could start talking to him, right? But then they saw that he was taking a long time to learn, so they asked Rabbi Ephraim to tell him to stop, right? Hold on over here. Then Rabbi Nachman put his hand on the face of his father-in-law, and his father-in-law fainted. Wild stuff. And they started to wake him up, and when he woke up, they asked him what it was, and he said, when Rabbi Nachman put his hand on my face, I saw my father-in-law. I saw my father, the one that they're making the yahrzeit for, and he was standing across from me, and he said to me, a son-in-law like this, you're telling him to learn Mishnayos? Meaning, he was saying to him, like, your son-in-law is so great, and you don't even know, and you're telling him to learn Mishnayos? And that's why he fainted. Right? When Rabbi Nachman put his hand on him, Rabbi Nachman was able to make him see this vision. Right? So they were all there, and they were very in great wonderment. And then from then on in, the name of Adonenu, Moirenu, Virabenu became that he was one of the Tzaddikei Ador, and people started going to him, and people started serving Hashem because of him. And this story is brought down in the Sefer Koich Ve'or Anshe Moran. Right? And this story, it says over here, this last little piece of it that we're going to do today, that this story of Alexandrovika, that this happened by this whole thing of yahrzeit, right? I heard this from Rabbi Moshe, who was sitting there, who heard it from somebody who saw that with his eyes. Okay, that's just the source of the story. Anyway, that is how Rebbe Nachman's name started getting big in the world.